All right, MA Marignon, turn 22. We'll continue the review style until turn 25, so I have the benefit of hindsight here, but also have forgotten plenty of the details. So our sight searching misses, as happens. We failed to seduce a sorceress, and so we are forced into a battle. Given our troubadour no gear, so he's just going to run forward and play the lute at this bodyguard, and it's quite damaging lute. No, I'm just kidding. He does at least have a broadsword, but doesn't have much in the way of armor, and is definitely not going to deal with skelly spam at night very well, so he dies. As is often the case for troubadours that try to seduce, but you have to give it a shot. So we have a battle against Micklin. I believe this is our army, yeah, attacking forward, and not too much here. This looks like just 6 barbarian province defense, which can be a little scary, but not for what we're bringing in. We do manage to lose a knight, which is a bit sad. Looks like we friendly fire them, as happens. Crossbowmen are just plain dangerous. And then we witness a battle of Ashdod against the Independents using some Bakemono with their sacreds, which is pretty cool because their sacreds are size 5 and the Bakemono are size 1, so they can actually fit together in the same square, which is pretty rare for size 5 units. Unfortunately, Bakemono are undisciplined, so they just rush forward. It looks like this is a throne province guarded by some sorcerers, it looks like. Maybe also some wizards. Yeah, nobody here too scary, so probably just like lesser elementals. Looks like that guy made some imps. But I don't think any of it's really going to matter too much against these Anakites, since these are the scary kind of Anakites with the regeneration blood bond, pretty difficult to take down, in addition to a bunch of elemental resistances. So I think they're just going to roll over this throne without too much difficulty. It will take them a second, right? That is one of the issues with giants, is that they're not super killy, but if you can't actually kill them, these giants also have the advantage of being berserkers, so you're not likely to rout them either. And yeah, this throne definitely cannot handle all of that. And then we have another attack of ours against Micklin, so this is good, right? We want to be hitting multiple provinces. I like that. Using a paladin to lead makes it a little more survivable, and a decent number of knights. Looks like only 5, so a little light. And we run into some jaguar warriors. Quite a few jaguar warriors, and we're up against a holy 4. Looks like this is actually a hero, so he's able to pull off a divine blessing, which means all of these jaguars are blessed. And then yeah, we managed to take, some eagles jumped in. So we killed the eagles, but the withering weapons here actually does matter. You can see that our paladin is old age. He has 6 hit points left, and he's just hanging out in the back here, where normally he would be fairly protected. I don't think our knights would have been able to deal with this, because, we're going to see him get mauled by some jaguars here. But we're down to 1 hit point here, so I do often wonder, like how much damage withering weapons really does, but there goes our paladin. So this is definitely a case where, withering weapons mattered. Like, would it have changed the result? Like, not really, right? This is just too many jaguar warriors. We definitely would have lost. But they may have actually lost, some jaguar warriors if our knights had continued to fight, because our paladin didn't die. Of course, Marignon being populated mostly by old men, we're perhaps a little more susceptible to withering weapons than, a lot of other factions. So yeah, this is not a great trade for us, especially losing the paladin is rough. They are pretty expensive. And if I recall, the eagle warriors, yeah, are on the cheap side, particularly for sacreds. So, this isn't too much of a loss, especially when you stack it up. Like, our knights are much more expensive. So this is a painful loss for us, but also, like, not the end of the world. It's just a raiding group. Speaking of raiding, it looks like we get attacked by Micklin somewhere. This is just a ping, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, maybe he was thinking that we weren't going to leave any province defense, but we did. Of course, we do only have the friar, so not impossible that friar takes an arrow and then we lose that province. But no, like I said, definitely a good idea to at least put 1 point of province defense in to prevent things like that from actually working. And then here we are spending some gems to get rid of some independence. If I recall, yep, there's some some flaming arrows here that's going to go off. It's perhaps a waste, but we're under a bit of pressure here, and barbarians can be decently scary. So flaming arrows goes off. We managed to trap some of our knights, which is sad. But otherwise, the knights with the high defense, that's really the essential part here against the barbarians. Of course, we get a little friendly fire there, as is normal for working with crossbowmen, but it works out for us pretty well. That is a fairly clean, no losses. So, we waste some gems. Did we have to use them? Probably not, but it was probably worth the extra security because we do need these forces as reinforcements for our current wars. So, it's like spending a couple fire gems to make sure we don't lose them. Probably worth it, even though not strictly necessary. And then here we have our caveman raiding group. And we run into not a ton of province defense, probably like 10-ish, 12 maybe. But cavemen, not fantastic. We're not in a cave anymore. They have a decent amount of hit points, but their skills are not good and their protection's really low. So caveman raiding group, probably not my best idea. They did manage to at least capture a province for us, if I'm recalling correctly. But they are surprisingly expensive, right? 20 gold apiece, so... using all that gold, it doesn't take that much. This isn't even a very good PD type. It doesn't take all that much to stop a caveman raiding group. And then there is a battle in Nazca. This is a storm from Ashdod, and they have a group of archers here. Pretty much just the one commander. So they have one giant commander and then one human commander. And so he's going to be blessing. Oh no, they have another giant commander here, but no gems, no kit or anything. So pretty much just relying on the bless and the sacreds, which, fair enough. In terms of what they're up against, Nazca looks like they're down to it, though they do have their pretender here, which is some sort of giant rock, a very magically powerful giant rock with an absolute ton of hit points and pretty high protection. So in a lot of ways similar to an obelisk, and it's very dangerous, although sadly does not have any gems. I guess maybe Nazca's out completely. Looks like they made some condors, although I think we've seen the condors fail before. They do at least attack rear, so they're just going after these human slingers here, and so they should be able to make relatively short work of them. But it looks like the giants are on attack closest, maybe even attack flyers. So they do manage to come back. They don't really save the human slingers, but at the same time, Ashdod doesn't really care about those guys. I can't imagine they're very expensive. And so once they're done chopping up the condors, then they'll go back in. Looks like this fellow berserked, so he's headed in. And these other casters, I don't think they really had much in the way of gems. A little bit of skelly spam coming out. Here's an example of what this fellow has been casting. Some low-level evocation. I mean, it's what they have available, so fair enough. But early on, it is difficult to utilize mages for a lot of power. You either have to really focus your research or have an awake researcher, something like that, in order to get good use out of your mages early on, especially against sacreds like this. This is kind of a worst case scenario. And it's important to remember that this could have been us, right? We took an imprisoned rainbow, which is pretty greedy. And could our knights have dealt with these? I don't know. It would have been rough. Certainly, we should be able to get the numbers, but early on, when we're both essentially cap limited, we got lucky that we weren't bordering Ashdod and that they didn't come after us first. Of course, Ashdod is not out of the woods yet. Fist of Iron. This caster is definitely powerful enough. I'm not sure if he has enough research, because they do have Blood Bond, right? So they spread out the damage, and Shocking Grasp, normally pretty good, but there's quite a bit of shock resistance on here, as I recall. 20 shock resistance. So, when you combine all that shock resistance and the fact that the damage is getting spread out among all the sacreds, and then they all regenerate it back up, that's why this is so powerful. But you can see that even the giants are really kind of only getting chip damage here. Unfortunately, being inanimate, there's no way really to get regeneration on him, so he's already down 100 hit points, and once the other guys show up, if they ever show up, eventually. Giants are not great at clearing the walls, because they just don't kill very fast, right? You can pretty much just fit one giant up there at a time, so they kill the wall defenders pretty slowly. But once all the wall defenders are dead, they manage to surround it. Let's see how much time we have left. There's still plenty of rounds left. This pretender's already down, 200 hit points. 200 hit points. So I think they'll be able to get it, and they are. So Not without cost, right? They do manage to lose like 3 Anakites, which is not the end of the world. Probably worse, they managed to lose an add-on, although one of them was diseased, so maybe it was the diseased one that was probably already kind of in trouble. The rest of the losses, more or less irrelevant, and, for taking a capital, and especially dealing with a pretty nasty pretender like that, this is a pretty good result for storming a capital, and I imagine that Ashdod will be pretty happy with this. And that does do it for Nazca, so they are vanquished. When you're next to Ashdod, that's definitely pretty tough. And then we have some unexpected events. We find 3 death gems. That's nice. We find even more fire gems and astral pearls. That's actually better. And then, some sect teaching that labor is wicked. That's fine. Our scales should deal with that in time. And I'll catch you guys after the cut. All right. This is the situation and what we're doing about it. We are moving our army forward into the province that started it all off. So pretty high confidence in this army at this point for like what we see. We are moving a scout on top of Mictlan to get an idea. Like, this is very unlikely to be, all of Mictlan's forces. So we can definitely stop, what we see here, but there's probably more behind it. And so next turn we'll hopefully have more information. In terms of Bandar, there are quite a few Tiger Riders starting to stack up here. So this is starting to look a little scary. Turns out these Seekers of Truths are not mages, which I did not realize at this point. So there's fewer mages here than I thought initially. But still, you can't ignore 70 Tiger Riders. Probably not quite 70, since some of them are the mages, and the scout report is probably wrong. But still, there's a lot of Tiger Riders stacking up here. We dealt with a stack of them before, but when you combine that with 70 more units here, granted most of them are militia, which is a little interesting. Adding bulk and siege strength to armies, particularly Tiger Riders being, essentially sacred cavalry, they don't really siege super well. At the same time, I don't know, militia are really not going to be useful, and Bandar is really far away from, being able to siege any infrastructure, so I think this might be a bit premature. Of course, since it is winter, they cannot actually cross, these mountain passes anyway, as we've discussed, and I believe these mountain passes are also closed at least for, 1 or 2 more turns. Which is definitely a major advantage for us, right? It forces our opponents, to funnel into a central location. It makes it so that our lands are going to have less raiding pressure against them, which is going to be really nice. Otherwise, we are, of course, recruiting our garbage commanders and, trying to catch up with our main stacks that once the pretender starts to assassinate us there, he'll hopefully just hit, random commanders rather than someone useful. And then speaking of mountain passes being closed, very sad about this mountain pass and that we haven't managed to get our scales in here. So, we have to go around. We have a very bizarre route, that we have to take various places. It's actually not very easy for us to get reinforcements over here, but we do at least have a good amount of reinforcements moving forward, a good amount more crossbowmen. And I think this is, quite a few more knights along with some more crossbowmen, as well as, some more random commanders here. There's like 2 commanders with pretty much all these stacks. So that way, at least, if one commander gets assassinated, the other one would have to backtrack. So it's not really that helpful, but still, there's a 50-50 shot that the wrong commander gets assassinated and our reinforcements get to carry forward. And then despite the war being ongoing, we are building a lab here this turn. And of course, our fortress is about to finish upgrading. We definitely do want to fortify this border a little bit, especially considering that Ashdod, just finished their war against Nazca, right? I was talking about how, it's good that we didn't start out bordering Ashdod, although we did end up bordering them relatively quickly, but we're actually pretty far away, capital wise, especially for a full house game, versus here's Nazca's capital over here. But Ashdod is finished now, right? So they're definitely going to be looking for someone else to fight, and we're already otherwise engaged with 2 other people. So, they may choose to come in against us, or they may choose to come in against Mictlan, which in some ways would be helpful, but would also cut down a lot on the potential spoils that we could get out of this war. So hopefully they will look elsewhere. There's definitely are other neighbors that, they could think about, but we'll have to keep an eye on that. Definitely having a fort here, and if we fill it, with some units and some mages, it'll make it a less appealing border. And you can never have too many forts, in my opinion. And then, yeah, so we're going to site search here. Not sure about that. We probably should have transferred these units. Oh, okay, we did transfer them over. That's weird. I'll have to check that in the editing, but I could have sworn that you can tell who's leading units by these little sword icons here. And I could have sworn this fellow had some sword icons. But maybe I'm just seeing things. Anyway, we are moving these units back, which makes sense because we want as many units as possible moving towards the front. It's quite a long journey. But in the meantime, this guy's going to hang out in site search since we're already here. Recruitment-wise, getting more knights in the capital, although a little on the light side because we are building a lab this turn, so some of our money's going into infrastructure. And then we're getting 2 more paladins. We may be thinking about great swords of sharpness at this point. Do we have that research yet? We do not. We don't have it queued either, but the great swords of sharpness are only at construction level 2, so it wouldn't be that hard to adjust our research to pick that up. And of course, we are expecting, we just lost a paladin for one of our raiding groups, and, we are expecting to have some people get assassinated, so we're going to need more leadership. So I don't necessarily disagree with 2 paladins, but they are really expensive. In terms of our scouting, I don't think we've caught anything too exciting this turn. We are hanging out. There's a bunch of vampires here that are locking down and have cracked this Vanheim fort. Independence will never storm. But we are curious to see, how Vanheim deals with this, and how long it takes them to deal with it. Also keeping an eye on the Utgard-Ermor conflict. Ermor is on top of this palisade, but they have not cracked it. But we're going to move our scout in and take a look at what's going on there. And then, otherwise we're going to try to see what's in Ashdod's capital. We're still definitely very much interested in them, and then also get a sense okay, well, who is Ashdod's new neighbor? Because that might become very relevant for us. And then otherwise just keeping an eye on this border, with Eriu and couple other people. There's Machaka up here, Utgard down here, also Ashdod. Because as I recall, I think Eriu, I know they've eaten, right? This used to be Ind, so they might be unoccupied at the moment. And I believe at this point we have a non-aggression pact. But when you have, a large elven nation on your border, you should probably always try to keep at least something of an eye on that. So yeah, I think that more or less covers turn 22. All right, MA Marignon, turn 23. We finished research and alteration, level 4, headed for 5, mostly for solar eclipse, although Incinerate is a very useful spell for us, so we also have our eyes on that. Looks like manages to claim a throne, which is good for them, but mostly irrelevant for us. Throne of Gaia, probably a little less exciting for them, although I'm sure they like the additional nature gems because they can definitely use them. We find a magic site, Crystal Garden. This is probably astral, possibly earth. And then we had some site searching that missed, as happens. Ashdod declaring another prophet, so it looks like the war with Nazca was not without, some losses. And lo and behold, we have an assassination attempt. And, here he is, the pretender, but he catches a scout. So, yeah, this is pretty much exactly what we want. We don't love losing scouts, but much better to be losing a scout than a mage or a paladin. I don't think this is actually on top of our army, as I recall, but we'll have to double check after the jump. And then we witness a battle between Archocephaly and Ubar. So this is Archocephaly attacking with a lot of elephants, and looks like there's a fellow here to try to make them ethereal, along with someone, a little bit of Sermon of Courage, maybe a little bit of Barkskin point buffing, and it looks like, Ubar. This is Nabah in the Middle Age. It looks like Nabah did not leave province defense, I'm guessing, and there was just a retreat. Yeah, just a lone camel rider, so he just retreated off since he had no leadership. So that's good news for Archocephaly. And then we witness a battle with Vanheim. I think this is against those vampires. Okay, yeah, they brought out quite a bit of stuff. So they've got some Valkyries, some of their Sacreds, which are Vans in this age, and then maybe some Thugs? No, it doesn't look like Thugs. Looks like probably just, lesser air elementals here. Vampires jump in. Vampires can be pretty dangerous, although I don't think they have great skills. Yeah, very mediocre attack and defense skills, so they're going to struggle to hit these elves. And then these Valkyries have Spirit Sight, which is really nice in this cave, although the Vans, their skills not so great, although you can see, even in the dark, right, they're still well above what the vampires are going to be, easily hitting. vampires do have life drain, but they don't have shock resistance. So yeah, I think this is going to work out pretty well for Vanheim. Lightning can deal with a lot of different things, although they may lose some Vans here. Elves don't love numbers, so like and Thralls actually hit pretty hard. They look kind of like Militia, but I think Thralls are actually significantly better. And then of course there is the Vampire Count, who it does look like they're struggling to deal with a little bit, although yeah, it looks like there was probably just an HP route there, so he flies off. So that was pretty nicely done by Vanheim. Yeah, they lose 3 Valkyries. I think they're gem summons for them, although don't quote me on that. So it's not the end of the world. Let's see if they do have a gold tag associated, so decently expensive, but for 21 vampires and a vampire count, like that can go ugly. And they jumped on that, I think, relatively quickly. Did they get attacked again? I'm not sure what's going on here. It says Vanheim's attacking Independence again. Interesting. So it looks like they had some event where dogs attacked, but I don't think the dogs are going to succeed where the vampires failed. Let's take a look at the worldwide event. Yeah, this is probably Throne of Gaia related, although actually maybe not, because I think that's like gnomes and earth gnomes, things like that. Who knows? There's lots of reasons that the independents attack. Speaking of independent attacks, Ashdod has to deal with one. This just looks like your regular misfortune scales, although that's a lot of knights. But with the sacreds that they have, yeah, I mean, this amount of knights absolutely going to roll over this amount of province defense, but, not such a big deal for Ashdod. That is one thing. If you have really nasty sacreds, taking misfortune scales isn't quite as bad, because it's a lot easier for you to react to these kind of events and, get rid of some nasty independent types. And we finished construction of our fortress. This is on the border with Ashdod, and I will catch you guys after the jump. All right, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. We are pushing our army forward, and if we like the look of things, we will go after Miklin's capital next turn. We are moving our scout to one of the adjacent provinces that we won't have eyes in. That still leaves another province here that we won't know. There could be other forces there, but we only have so many scouts in the area. By taking this province, right, we will get a good idea of what's in at least these surrounding provinces. So we'll have a pretty good idea of possible reinforcements that could make it into Miklin. It does look like they withdrew that Jaguar force that beat our raiders back to the capital. So yeah, there's quite a few Jaguar warriors here, 50 units, mostly Jaguar warriors. Also a lot of High Priests of the Sky, which is not great because those are air mages, and that means shock damage, and we do not have shock resistance. So yeah, we're just going to have to see how that goes. Otherwise, continuing to bring forward the same reinforcing groups, and then this is where his pretender is, who did the assassinating. He may choose to assassinate again. Hopefully he won't assassinate the guy that actually has the troops. Also, sadly, because it is winter, our old men, some of them get diseased. Looks like only one Grandmaster managed to pick up a disease, so that's good. But that is one of the reasons that in Unaging Bless is kind of attractive for Marignon, although I will say, giving up that amount of power on your knights, it's a tough sell. And then we are finally starting to get our Dominion in places. So, these mountain passes are now accessible, even in the middle of winter because of our heat Dominion. And because of that, we're able to take this reinforcement group, and instead of having to traverse around the mountains, we can just come here and, pick up. We have a few knights here, and we are recruiting some more knights. So we'll be able to pick everybody up and cross this mountain pass. And if we're lucky, next turn it'll be spring, and so fingers crossed there'll be some heat here, and we'll be able to cross, this mountain pass as well, significantly cut down the amount of time it's going to take for our reinforcements to actually make it over to the front. Otherwise, a boatload of recruitment pretty much everywhere that we can recruit. We are recruiting some halberdiers here, mostly just because I think we don't have a temple at this point. The halberdiers do a good amount of damage, and it is pierce damage, so in that sense I think they'll be decent if Ashdod attacks us. They also have the castle defense bonus, so we'll have a little bit more time to respond, although against a stack of giants it probably isn't going to matter all that much. In terms of our core lands, looks like more knights here, so we're actually getting to the point where we can get some knights in some of these other locations, and then some more crossbowmen because they are quite useful early on. See, mage wise it looks like a mix of witch hunters, and of course we're getting an initiate up here because we have no temple here yet. In fact, we have nobody to even build a temple here. So let's see, yeah, we're sending a paladin up there because, yeah, that's pretty much who can build a temple. I suppose we could send one of our mages, but then we'd be getting less research. And I think that covers the majority of our actions. In terms of Bandar, things, yeah, more or less look the same. Not much has changed there. This is where that Archocephalian kind of mix between I guess it's like a heavy raiding group. They're pretty deep in Nabah's territory, so it looks like Nabah's been doing a pretty good job of raiding, and I don't think this is going to be quite enough to siege down Nabah's capital. It's over here. I think it's this one. It hides its name, and this is pretty deep and disconnected, so yeah, I mean, it's going to deny Nabah like some resources for the capital and some income, but this isn't looking great for Archocephaly. Otherwise, we are abandoning our scouting of this like Urmor-Utgard conflict. I'd forgotten that Utgard had actually taken Urmor. So while Urmor is sieging two of these forts, like, yeah, there's not much here, and this looks like it's more or less over. So we're moving our scout over into Abyssea's territory, and also going to try to get eyes on, Man and Pangaea over here, who we don't really know a ton about yet. And I think that covers it for our scouting, more or less. Oh, we did see here, or Uruk in this age. And yeah, it's looking like they're probably not going to be that big. I mean, we don't know that for sure yet. But, I mean, we know that, like, Menchaca has a pretty strong presence here to the north. Obviously, we're pretty well acquainted with Eriu. And that just doesn't really leave a lot of room for so maybe they're really long and stringy and coastal. But, yeah, it looks like Uruk might be in trouble. So yeah, I think that more or less covers turn 23. All right, MA Marignon, turn 24. Looks like Ashdod has claimed the Throne of Misfortune. I think they're already pretty deep along Misfortune, so there's really not a lot of reason not to claim it. Though definitely if you're at Misfortune 2, there's something to be said about not going down to Misfortune 3, but I don't know. I find that Misfortune 2 often ends up being Misfortune 3 because a lot of misfortune events increase misfortune. But people have varying opinions about claiming that throne. I think it gives a bunch of astral pearls, which is quite nice. We have an assassination attempt. Not a great surprise, and this looks like it might be the guy that was leading our reinforcements. So not the end of the world to be losing a mounted commander, right? And it kind of highlights like one of the issues of having a pretender assassin. Pretender turns are really valuable, and I mean, Lord knows I am very guilty of wasting many a pretender turn on all sorts of boondoggles. And I really do think that like this is a cool style of play, but it's like use a pretender turn to assassinate a mounted commander. I don't know. I wouldn't feel great about that. So it's cool stuff, but there are ways around it. And assassins are kind of hard to use in general, I think. There's a bit of a knack to it, and people have to kind of play ball as well. So our army moves forward, and yeah, there's just a standard amount of province defense there. We shouldn't have a problem with that. We don't even friendly fire one of our knights, which is nice. And then we get raided somewhere. I'm not sure where this is. Ooh, pretty deep. That's interesting. Okay, just a scout again. A little insulting. Yes, we do have province defense. One check, like, okay, sure, I guess. Not really sure. This is our fort, too. So it's like if we had, province defense on not our fort, why would we not have province defense on our fort? But I mean, I'm happy to get rid of scouts, so he tried to retreat, but I don't think there's any retreat routes. Of course, speaking of losing province defense, let's see. Yeah, so we get a Throne of Gaia attack. This looks like it's next door to our fort. And then let's see, Ill Omen. See, this is what I'm talking about. Misfortune +3. So, anyway, we have misfortune. Looks like Abyssea also perhaps taking some misfortune. No, this is also, this is definitely Throne of Gaia related. The dogs were probably just your standard misfortune. And it looks like they actually had a force here, so they either managed to predict it or they just happened to be moving through the area. There's also Barbarian PD here who, are going to be able to chop up these Earth Gnomes without too much difficulty. And let's see if our brave province defense can do the same. Of course, I think that it is cavemen. Yeah. And, 2 cavemen, not equal to however many barbarians that was, 12 or something. So let's, the cavemen actually doing a lot better than I thought. and then they run away. And our friar definitely not going to be able to punch his way to victory. So we do lose that province, so that is sad. We'll have to recapture it. It is, at least, like I said, next to our fort, so I think we recruited some halberdiers this turn, maybe send them in, although it is in a cave, and the halberdiers don't see that well in the dark. And then we had a hero show up, which is really nice considering we're Misfortune 2. Unfortunately, this is the hero that I always seem to get when I'm playing Marignon. You know, she's cool, but she's not a mage. She's not really that relevant. She does give an inspiration bonus, and she can lead a lot of units, I think 120 leadership. So, you know, she's a good army commander, although just a human, so not a particularly resilient army commander. But considering that, you know, our commanders are in the process of getting assassinated, you know, an extra free commander is nice. And then it looks like things did not go well for Satis. I have no idea what happened here. But they are permanently vanquished, and I will catch you guys after the jump. All right, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. We are, of course, running away. So we took a look at, you know, what we had not known before, and there's a ton of eagle warriors here, in addition to monster toads. The archers were a little less concerned about, but that's a lot of sacreds to chew through, a lot of decay weapons. You know, you combine that with all the casters from the capital, in addition with all those jaguar warriors, coupled with the fact that it is spring, and so this mountain pass is now open, and, you know, these tiger riders can move through and kind of cut off, well, they wouldn't cut off our retreat if we made an attack against Mictlan proper, but this is not looking like such a safe position for us anymore. Also, the tiger riders on the capital have moved out. Actually, they could have come here, even though this is marked as red. I do believe this mountain pass is open because there's 3 heat on each side. So yeah, the tiger riders are on the move. It's looking like Kailasa is gearing up to attack us, or sorry, Bandar Log. And so it's probably not a great moment for us to risk a catastrophic battle against Mictlan. So instead, we're pulling back to a location where, you know, we have some province defense, and we can meet up with some of our reinforcements. Speaking of our reinforcements, that was the commander that was leading them, right? So our other commander moved forward, but, you know, now he has to backtrack to collect these guys. So, you know, we lose some time. It's not great, but it is what it is. Definitely better that the pretender is over here assassinating, you know, our reinforcements versus like assassinating, you know, one of these commanders that we leave like half of our troops behind and then they die, right, in an engagement where Mictlan moves forward. So, you know, silver linings. We are hoping that Bandar Log attacks, although there's a good chance that they'll wait for their reinforcements. But if they do attack with what they have here, we should be able to smash it. And, you know, considering that we move forward here, we were planning on attacking Mictlan, so they may think that, like, yeah, that's what we're going to do and what we're planning on doing, and that would be a reasonable assumption because that was our plan until we saw, you know, a stack of 160 Eagle Warriors and friends. Otherwise, we continued to do a decent amount of troop recruitment at home, you know, recruiting, yeah, a few more halberdiers along the border. It does look like we're starting to run into some money problems, as is ever the case with all Dominions players, probably Grandmaster related. We do manage to push out a decent number of knights from our capital, and this is probably, yeah, more crossbowmen who are going to be pretty useful for us early on, although we are starting to get towards the point of the game where it kind of falls off. We especially have to be careful against Mictlan, who has pretty solid air access and will get arrow fend probably sooner rather than later. I'm not sure if enchantment is a priority research school for them. So we may have some time yet, but like, yeah, turn 30, like certainly plenty of time to make it to enchantment 6 if that's what you're rushing. And then, you know, once we start to get to like turn 40 and stuff, then probably quite a few people will have it. But at least for the moment, crossbowmen are going to be really useful for us, you know, particularly against Mictlan, right, who has the withering weapons. So melee is unpleasant, and their sacreds don't really have much in the way of protection, no shields. So I think that more or less covers what we're up to. We kind of already talked about the most interesting scouting things related to our war. We have gotten a better sense of who Ashdod's new neighbors are. So there's Phlegra here, who also borders Xibalba. So it looks like Ashdod, shares a border between those two, although not a large border with Xibalba. And we don't really know how large Phlegra is yet. Let's see, No, we don't know where their capital is yet, although, yeah, this is Xibalba. So Xibalba not looking particularly large. Maybe somebody that, might be interested in coming in against Mictlan. And then, yeah, we've scouted a bit more of Uruk, who's perhaps a little larger than I first thought. And also of note, Atlantis has made landfall over here. Not particularly relevant for us, but it is somewhat interesting. And I think that covers the majority of our scouting. Yes, we see that Pythium is on their way out. That makes me sad. Always like to see the Roman nations do well. I do think Pythium has a bit of a challenge being in the Middle Age with a lot of large powers, but can be a very powerful nation, I think. But for whatever reason, it looks like it did not work out for them this game, and Man is sieging their capital, although it is not yet cracked. So we're going to move our scout in, to try to take a look at that. And then we're going to continue to try to scout deeper into Abyssia's territory. And Abyssea is looking like a bit of an odd shape, very long and relatively narrow. And then in terms of research, we're probably closing in on Alteration 5. Yeah, 2 more turns and we'll have Alteration 5. That'll be a pretty big upgrade for our army v army fight. Another reason for us to be pulling back from that fight with Mictlan, because if we can just delay that 2 turns, it's going to be much better for us because they're going to struggle to hit us in the dark, and with our Spirit Sight, our Knights should do even better. And we certainly don't mind having access to Incinerate, which won't be as useful in an army v army fight, but will be pretty useful if his Pretender makes an appearance. Otherwise, our research is unchanged. Conjuration 3 will get us baby fire elementals, but I think we're probably more interested in Phoenix power, because I've been talking about Incinerate. Well, Incinerate's not actually something that most of our mages can cast because, yeah, it requires Fire 3, right? So Witch Hunters are Fire 2. If you hand them in a Fire Gem, like basically per Fire Gem, they could cast Incinerate, but that is very expensive. A much cheaper way in terms of gems is to get access to Phoenix power and let them, use that to get up to Fire 3, and then they can cast Incinerate, at least until they fall asleep. So Conjuration 3 going to be pretty important for us, and then Thaumaturgy 5 for the Soul Slay, will be another useful answer. Mictlan can definitely gear their Pretender to deal with fire resistance, so we'll probably have a relatively short Incinerate window, at least for use against their Pretender. It will still be somewhat useful against elites, but Soul Slay is just going to be another potentially better avenue to deal with super combatants such as Mictlan's Pretender. So yeah, I think that more or less covers turn 24.